Chaim. Good Shabbos to all of you. Today something very significant happened at the Olympics. In the Olympics in Tokyo today, they recognized and they had a moment of silence for the 11 Israeli athletes that were killed, that were murdered, that were butchered by PLO, Palestinian terrorists, just for the fact that they were Jewish. It happened in 1972. They were first hijacked, and the terrorists wanted a bunch of Palestinian terrorists to be released and two famous German leftists to be released. And the German government didn't want to give in, and they said they're gonna do a raid, and they botched it. And these German police and soldiers and special forces that were supposed to protect the Jews, only 30 years after the Holocaust, messed it up. And 11 Jewish athletes were killed. People that were professionals, swimmers and boxers, anything you could think of. They were just there to play sports, and they were killed for one reason. They were murdered because they were Jewish. And for years, the Israeli government and the families have been begging that the Olympics should officially recognize these who were murdered and were terrorized at the Olympics while they were performing. And it was never agreed to be done. It took 49 years, and today in the morning in Tokyo, before the Olympics started, they had a moment of silence for these 11 Israelis that were butchered. 49 years later, only 2 of the widows were able to be there. The rest are either gone or not able to travel. How sad. How ironic. Would it happen to any other people? Would that be able to be tolerated if it was someone of a different nationality, of a different race, of a different religion? That although they were murdered and butchered at the Olympics while they were athletes, they weren't recognized. But you know what? In Judaism we say it's never too late. It's something for us to think about. But actually, this Shabbos is a very special Shabbos, because we read from Isaiah, the famous prophet, who envisioned the destruction of Jerusalem, but later became the prophet of the greatest hope. The one who spoke about turning swords into plowshares, and about Zion being the place where Torah comes from, about the whole world knowing God's knowledge. He says something else. This Shabbos, he tells us, Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. He promised the Jewish people that God will comfort them after the destruction of the temple. And the rabbis ask, why does he say Nachamu twice? And there's many interpretations given. One is because one Nachamu is for the first temple that was destroyed, and the second Nachamu is for the second temple that was destroyed. Another opinion is that Nachamu, one is for the soul of the Jewish people, one is for the body. The soul was devastated by the obliteration of God's holy place, and so was the body. And God says Nachamu for each. But there's another opinion. Nachamu is for 2 types of anti-Semitism, the rational or the irrational, or for 2 types of anti-Semitism, within and without. It's Isaiah the prophet that says, your destructors and destroyers will come from within. We witness today with Ben and Jerry's and with so many Jews who are ready to fight their own people. And we're worried, how are we going to survive? And what does God say? Nachamu, Nachamu Ami. I will comfort you from your enemies from without, but also from your enemies from within. It will be a double portion of comfort. You know, they say this story about this woman who's on a train, a Jewish woman, and she sees this guy with a beard and a yarmulke and tzitzis. And she looks at him and says, you're a disgrace to our people. You're an insult. You're so archaic. You're so backward. You're so old-fashioned. How can we handle people like you? The guy can't get a word in. Finally, he opens his mouth and he says, excuse me, ma'am, but I'm Amish. And she says, oh, you're Amish? How beautiful that you keep your traditions, that you keep your religion, that you're proud of who you are. Some of us will never tolerate our own. But we can't be discouraged by that. We can't be let down by that. We have to be able to have faith in who we are and what we represent. And we have to be able to celebrate the gift that God gave us, and remember Nachamu Nachamu Ami, that God comforts us, and that ultimately there might be a double standard in the world, but ultimately truth prevails. May Hashem give each and every one of you a beautiful Shabbos. As Moses says, sometimes in this week's Torah portion, Moshe tells us that sometimes the struggles of the Jewish people is only God testing us to give our enemy into our hands, that we shall overcome them. We will overcome. We will prevail. Israel will survive and thrive and be strong, and so will the Jewish people. And the prophet Isaiah Yeshayahu promises it this week. Good Shabbos. We'll see you tomorrow in Shul. God bless you and have a great week.